What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's reaction video is going to be the 15 emptiest parts of the USA. Now, this is by Geography King, a fantastic channel, so if you haven't seen them, the link will be in the description, and go and check them out. But wait till after this video. It's a fantastic learning channel. I've learned so much on geography, the US climate and stuff like that. I really have, and hopefully you guys have learned with me. Now, today, we're going to be finding out what the top 15 emptiest places in the US are. Now, surely there's got to be a desert in there somewhere, maybe like Arizona, potentially Nevada, or something like that. That would be my guess, but other than that, I have absolutely no clue. Get your guesses if you've never seen this in the comments below. And yeah, let's get straight into it. Hit that like button, I'd really appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. And why not share it with a friend? I never ask you guys to share it with a friend, but if you've got a friend and you want to share it, go for it. Why not, guys? And yeah, let's get straight into it.
Howdy, it's Kyle with
All
another
right.
geography video, this time counting down the 15 emptiest parts of the US, the places in the country where you have large areas with few, if any, people and few, if any, roads. So we're talking about true middle of nowhere. As you may have guessed, all 15 of these are in the western half of the US. There really isn't much true middle of nowhere in the eastern US. Back east, you're never that terribly far from the nearest road or house or some sign of civilization. But I do want to quickly mention a couple of the spots back east that are middle of nowhere before I get to this countdown.
Okay.
Northwestern Maine is the most middle of nowhere you're going to find back east. There are very few people that live there and very few roads. Everglades National Park in South Florida is another spot where there are no people and no roads, just a bunch of swampy land. And northeastern Minnesota, there's a lot of lakes, a lot of open areas, and really not many people or many roads. But those three spots are the closest thing you're going to get to true middle of nowhere in the eastern U.S.
Why is nobody there? They look absolutely stunning. All three of them look absolutely beautiful. Gotta visit them. Why are they in the middle of nowhere?
And if you're thinking that Texas or the southeastern U.S. are country or rural, let's look at it in this perspective. Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming combined have 3 million people, and it's about the same size as Texas and Oklahoma combined. Texas and Oklahoma have 32 million people.
Wow.
It's also the same size as Arkansas, Tennessee, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia combined, which have a total population of 30 million. So you put that in perspective, there are so few people that live in the interior West. It's so much more remote, so much more empty and barren, and it's a lot more country and rural than anything you're going to get in the eastern U.S.
That's incredible when
My
you put it that
personal
way.
definition of middle of nowhere is somewhere where you don't have a phone signal, somewhere where you won't hear a train in the distance at all, somewhere where there's no services whatsoever.
Oh, wow.
And also where there are no ranches and farms, just true open wilderness.
So literally in the middle of nowhere, by definition.
There are several reasons why these places are true wilderness. They might be very inaccessible with high elevation or perhaps extreme temperatures. The soil might be really bad to where you can't grow any crops or graze animals.
Okay.
There might be no water at all, or for those few spots back east, too much water. But enough of this intro stuff. Let's get to the countdown. At number 15 is northeastern California. In an area about the size of Rhode Island, there are only about 10,000 people. And most people know California for having the most people of all states with about 40 million, but most of the state's pretty empty, actually. So if you were to put California along the East Coast, the amount of space it takes up on the East Coast, there'd be over 60 million people. So if you think California is really crowded, it really isn't, especially when you consider the fact that 20 million of the people in California live just in the LA area. So California is mostly empty, and the northeastern corner of the state is one of the emptiest parts of the state.
Yeah, that's it.
At number 14 is northwestern Colorado. This isn't the part of the state that most people think of when they think of Colorado. This isn't where you have the super high mountains with all the ski resorts. This isn't where you have all the 14,000 foot plus mountains. Just kind of high desert, really. There are some beautiful mountains there, but this isn't a very well traveled part of the state. And it's also not a part of the state where many people live.
I mean, again, it's just a beautiful place, isn't it? And I want to say my prediction at the start, I said Nevada area, I did say desert. Is already wiped out the east. So I pretty much was correct on that, which is, you know, I'm finally learning my geography. I'm learning a little bit. I'm quite happy with that.
At number 13 is north central Nebraska. And when you think of Nebraska, this probably isn't the part of the state you're thinking of. These are the sandhills. There's no cornfields there, no ranching, and virtually no farms. With it being sand, you can't really grow any crops or graze animals. There's virtually no water there.
Oh, look at that.
It's just a bunch of empty landscape. And the scenery isn't spectacular, but I do think it's very beautiful in a very subtle way. But yeah, north central Nebraska, really empty.
Wow.
At number 12
Nobody
is
for miles.
southeastern Utah. And for me personally, this is the most beautiful scenery in the entire country. I love all the national parks and national monuments, the canyons, the sandstone formations, the arches, all of it. And with all the parks there, you do have a lot of visitors during the high season, but there are very few people that live there.
I mean, you can understand this one. If I was to guess where nobody lives, it's areas like this. I mean, it's not really the correct terrain, is it? You can't really get about. There's no roads going in and out. Beautiful and gorgeous to visit and see, but it makes sense. It's miles and miles, which is madness to think it's this much space all empty when you think about the UK. Really nowhere near. Well, it's probably again the size is this probably isn't too far off it. You know what I mean? We have nowhere near something like this which isn't populated, is what I'm trying to get across, and it is mental to think, but it still looks stunning. It looks so
And
stunning.
even in the busy national parks, all you got to do is hike a few miles and you're away from all people, away from all civilization. But
Yeah.
southeastern Utah, really empty. At number 11 is north central Washington. And of all the places on this countdown, this is the only one that I haven't actually been to. So I'm
Okay.
looking at some of the scenery. It looks really gorgeous. And I'm just basing this on the size of the area and how few people live there. And I was looking at some of the numbers. It's not very well traveled. It's just pretty inaccessible. Not very many roads. Very
Makes
few
sense.
small towns. I think my next road trip has to include north central Washington. It's beautiful. It's also really empty. Kicking off the top 10 is the Mojave Desert. It's primarily in southeastern California, but there are portions of it in Nevada and Arizona as well. And even though there are two interstates that run right through it, it's still mostly empty. There are
Yeah.
very few roads, most of which are dirt, and really no towns at all. There are a few spots where there's a cluster of houses you might be able to call a community, but no real towns. You can drive for well over an hour in this area and not pass through anything that's been developed
Hour.
by humans. It's just really open, barren desert. So if you want to see some true emptiness out in the big old desert, check out the Mojave.
I mean, I imagine it'd be pretty impossible to live out there if no one else did. If you've got to drive an hour every time just to go get some milk, you know what I mean? Just to get to some civilization, it's pretty much impossible to live there. And I can see why people hasn't. But imagine if you were just that one person, built a house there, somehow lived there, and it's like just all the quietness in the world. It'd be pretty awesome. I imagine it's absolutely roasting, but it'd be pretty
At
awesome.
number 9 is the Sonoran Desert of southwestern Arizona. And whereas the Mojave Desert is higher elevation, you have a lot more Joshua trees. In the Sonoran Desert, it's much lower elevation, you have a lot
Okay.
more cacti. So a lot of people think of the desert scenery, they're thinking of Sonoran Desert, and it's pretty open. And a lot of it is actually an Air Force bombing range. You're certainly not going to be visiting that, but there are some desert
Definitely not.
national monuments you can visit, such as Sonoran Desert or Oregon Pipe Cactus. So these are some great spots to visit if you want to see some true low elevation, open, barren desert.
Oh, wow.
At number 8 is west central New Mexico. This is the part of the state that's south of I-40, west of I-25, and north of Silver City. This isn't a terribly inaccessible part of the country. The elevations aren't really high. The temperatures aren't really extreme. It's just there are very few people that live there and
Fair
very few
enough.
roads that go through the region. And what also makes it so remote is that there aren't many visitors there either. There are no national parks or national monuments. There are some wilderness areas and national forests, but those aren't big draws for tourists. So West Central New Mexico is one of my favorite parts of the entire country, partly because it is so empty.
Oh, wow.
At number
And again, I suppose you've got that much land and that many beautiful things, that many beautiful national sport parks. You just sport for choice, and some will get left behind like that. Just there won't be a national park; it'll just be emptiness. People will enjoy it; it will look beautiful, but because you've got so many other options, no one goes to it, and that makes sense. That's just because you're absolutely massive, aren't you?
Number 7 is simply Montana. It's hard to pick a part of the state that's really empty because the whole state's pretty empty. It's a huge state with only 1 million people,
Wow.
the vast majority of which live along one of the interstates that goes through the state or near Glacier National Park. And it isn't all mountains either. A lot of folks think that Montana is going to be all high mountains, but there's a lot of high plains and rolling hills in the state. It's all very beautiful, but it is also very empty. But yeah, Montana, not much there, not many people, really beautiful, really
Very
empty.
contrasting.
And along those same
pictures.
lines, at number 6 is Wyoming. It's not quite as large as Montana.
Yeah, we know Wyoming's the least populated state, isn't it? Or at least one of the biggest areas and the least populated state is mental. It's huge, but no one lives in it.
But for an area the size of New York and Pennsylvania combined, there's a total population of 600,000 in the entire state.
Mental.
It's the least populated state in the entire country.
There we go.
And just like Montana, the vast majority of the people that live there live along one of the interstates that goes through the state or in the northwestern corner near the national parks. I mean, you can drive for hours on the back roads through the state and really not go through anything but small little towns. There's really hardly a phone signal through most of the state. It's really remote, really barren,
Wow.
but Wyoming, beautiful state, but also really empty. All right, we're about to get real deep as we get into the top 5.
Top 5.
At number 5 is southeastern Oregon. For an area about the size of New Hampshire, there's a grand total of about 20,000 people there. It's just mostly wide open and very remote. And it's not the most
20,000
spectacular.
people. in that amount of land. That's pretty incredible. You know what I mean? Like again, when you think about it, it's huge and huge. There's only 20,000 people. Again, look at that image. You know? This is just me hearing about how empty they are, but looking how beautiful
Scenery
they
in the
are.
world, it's mostly high desert, but it is very pretty. But it isn't the high elevations that keeps this area from being so, empty. It's the fact that you don't really go through it to get from point A to point B. And without there being spectacular scenery, there's not really a lot of people visiting there.
Fair enough.
So you don't have a lot of people going through it. You don't really have any small towns. It's just truly remote, really wide open. Southeastern Oregon, the fifth emptiest part of the country.
Wow.
At
Fifth
number
emptiest spot.
4 is northwestern and west central Utah. This is just some almost like barren wasteland. It's just west and southwest of the Great Salt Lake. We're talking the Great Salt Lake Desert here, just flat,
Wow.
open, barren nothingness. And for an area about the size of New Hampshire, you have about 10,000 people that live there. So extremely remote, very few people. This is an area that not even indigenous groups populate because the land is so bad. There's no water there at all. The ground is just so salty, so you can't grow anything or graze anything there. So it's just empty wasteland, basically.
Literally
I think it's
nothing.
pretty beautiful myself.
Wow.
But, again, northwestern, west central Utah, extremely barren and really empty.
And again, it's just natural beauty, isn't it? It's just natural. People call it waste. Some people will not like that it's all natural, but you've got to say it's a natural landscape. Nobody really affects it, and it's like wow, absolutely stunning. And but it naturally can be created like that. It is amazing to see.
At number 3 is central Nevada, and this is a huge area with very few people at all. To put it in
I did say
perspective,
Nevada.
the entire state has 2.8 million people. There are 2 million in the Las Vegas area, 600,000
Wow.
in the Reno Lake Tahoe area, and 100,000 living along I-80. So you add all that up, that means there's only 100,000 people in the entire rest of the state, an area about the
Wow.
size of either Maine or South Carolina. Think about that. If you live in South Carolina, entire state, only 100,000 people. That's how few people live in central Nevada. It's just super empty. And the fact that it is so empty is why you have some pretty sketchy things going on out there. This is where Area 51 is, and I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but there is obviously some pretty sketchy stuff going on at Area 51, and it's in central Nevada for a reason. You also have some nuclear waste dump sites out there, so
Oh,
central
wow.
Nevada, truly empty, really barren, but it's also really beautiful.
Well, I never knew where Area 51 was, so that's something you learned from me. And it makes sense, you know, if you're going to pick somewhere to have a potentially sketchy, high operation military thing, you pick in the middle of nowhere where it's hard to access and not many people around to access it. I rate it. I could have probably guessed it would be in an empty place. Never knew it was central Nevada, but now you know.
At number 2 is central Idaho, and this area isn't as large as the empty part of central Nevada, but there are a few people in central Nevada. There are nobody in central
Oh,
Idaho.
wow.
So coming from the Bitterroot Wilderness down to the River of No Return Wilderness into the Salmon River area, there are no people, no small towns, no roads. It's completely inaccessible. And with the exception of some deep parts of some unexplored caves, there's really nowhere else in the U.S. where you can find parts where no human being has stepped on
That's
except
incredible.
for central Idaho. If Bigfoot exists, he's going to be in central Idaho. There could be all kinds of stuff going on there that we don't know about. It's just so empty, so incredibly remote, also extremely beautiful, but with no people there, it's also extremely empty.
Wow.
And I'm sure it'll be a huge shock to you to learn what the number 1 spot is, but of course it's Alaska. It's more than twice the size.
I can't believe I never even guessed Alaska. I didn't even think about Alaska. I was thinking mainland. Oh, I can't believe that. Obviously, Alaska's going to be number 1. Obviously, everybody should know that. Why did I not guess that? I'm going to be looking through the comments, right? And if you have done your list at the start, if you haven't put Alaska in, I'm going to be disappointed in you because you should know that. I'm disappointed in myself. I really am.
Texas with a population of about 700,000, half of which live in just the Anchorage area. The
Yeah.
vast majority of the state is really empty and barren. Even native groups didn't really inhabit most of the state. There are very few roads in the entire state, almost all of which are in the southeastern quadrant. You have to take, little bush planes and float planes throughout the state to get from one place to the other.
Yep.
It's just so remote. But yeah, Alaska, obviously the emptiest part of the entire country.
Obviously.
And there you have it, the 15 emptiest parts of the U.S. And again, they're all out west. But if you're from back east and you haven't been out to the west, I strongly encourage checking it out. There's nothing like being out in the middle of absolute nowhere, camping out in open, looking up at the sky and just seeing how dark the night sky can be, just seeing how many stars you can see, seeing what the Milky Way actually looks like. No trains going off in the distance, no cell phone reception. It's wonderful. And if you've seen some of my other videos, I do love big cities. I love visiting the cities. I love doing all the city stuff, but I wouldn't really want to live in a big city. I
Makes
really
sense.
love the openness of the interior West. It's wonderful. Remote USA is wonderful USA. I hope you enjoyed this video. If
Wow, that is in the video. Go and check Geography King out, like I said. And what you were touching on at the end, it's a different experience. And it's one, I feel like you've got to try every experience. You'll know what you like best. And again, even if you don't like it better than one, you'll still have a fantastic time. It's something I definitely need to do. And I've got a lot of things to do. The list is like absolutely mega from watching these videos, so I can't wait to do them one day. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you want me to check out more Geography King, let me know in the comments, guys. If you've enjoyed it, hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. It shows me that you have actually enjoyed it. And hit that subscribe button as well. You absolute legends. I will see you in the next one. Peace.